Hi guys, it's Steffi from the Novelty Corner. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to another Books Beside My Bed video. For those of you who are new here, I film one of these every week where I wrap up the last 7 days worth of reading. For those who are very familiar with the series, welcome back. I'm going to say buckle up, grab a cup of tea and relax because this is going to be a long one. I read 12 books this week, guys, because holidays. It is my reading week from the 5th until the 11th of January. I read 12 books. My page count is a little bit weird this week because it was a struggle to find the page count of some of the ebooks that I was reading. So it's roughly 3,700 and something-ish. There is some margin of error there. I can't do anything about that. And my yearly reading total is up to 18 books for 2020. I was participating in Smutathon for the week. I wasn't intending to do all of the challenges, but I ended up doing all of the challenges plus an extra book. Some of these books also worked for the Read Your Shelves and Get Shit Done readathons, as well as fitting into the Romanceopoly challenges for January. I will go through all that as I go through the books. Quick media update. I have been watching season 2 of Rush this week. Rush was a 2008 TV show that was released here in Australia. It is a police procedural based on the Tactical Response Unit, which is based off the Critical Incident Response Team. I think that's right. And I just love the show. I put it on because it's good background and just sort of brainless action TV for me to watch with good characters and great acting. And I also finally got to watch season 2 of Titans, which was released on Netflix in Australia on Friday, and I loved it, but there's reasons why I loved it because it's not perfect. It's very campy and very overdramatic at times. But for those of you who are very unfamiliar with me, I love anything to do with the Bat family. I am a big fan of psychoanalyzing Batman and Nightwing and Batgirl. So this just made me so happy because there were so many things about it that just spoke to me on that. I really want to talk about this, but I have no one to talk about it mine. So I sat there just thinking about it the whole time. But yes, I am that crazy person who psychoanalyzes characters from the couch. But now on to the books. The first book that I read this week was Dark Lover by J.R. Ward. This is a 2005 release from Piatkus and I gave it 3.5 out of 5 stars. The challenges that this fit this week was the Fang Alley challenge for Romanceopoly, the new to you author category for both Smutathon and the Read Your Shelves challenge, and it would also fit the Start a Series challenge from the Get Shit Done readathon. This is a very popular urban fantasy paranormal romance story anyway, and I'd never started it before. It follows Wrath, who is the last pure-blood vampire left on Earth, and he is the leader of the Black Dagger Brotherhood. There are a group of individuals on the planet called Slayers who go around hunting vampires, and Wrath has a score to settle with all of them because they killed his parents and he's very, very bitter and traumatized by that. One day he is approached by one of his sort of friends from the Black Dagger Brotherhood who asks him to look after his half-human, half-vampire daughter. Her name is Beth. She doesn't know anything about her vampire heritage and she is about to make the transition to becoming a vampire, which is a very dangerous time for vampires. And Wrath is rather antisocial and does not want to do this, does not want to take the responsibility of a transitioning vampire, which can be quite dangerous. But when his friend is killed, he decides that he will honor that last wish and things sort of go from there. And this is it's like a Fated Mates story. I don't know. Yeah, no, it's kind of like a Fated Mates story. It was fun. It was entertaining. It was good to actually start this series and see what it actually was because I think you hear people talk about them a lot. It actually was different to what I thought it was going to be and I enjoyed it. Then I read The Disasters by M.K. England for the Galactic Grimoire Book Club pick. This is a 2018 release from HarperCollins and I gave it, in the end, I think I've settled on 2.5 stars. It was a perfectly fine read. It is a young adult science fiction book about a group of washouts from a space academy who get caught up and then implicated in an attack on the space academy that they were attending. And so they have to flee and find allies and try and find out what is going on. This has one character point of view, which I found really surprising for a book like this, and that is Nax. And he was training to be a pilot and that he had pinned his entire future on this. So to wash out is devastating and then to be implicated as the person behind the attack is even more so. The one thing that I can say about this book, it has tons and tons of diversity. Unlike a couple of other books that I've read recently, this one doesn't feel like the diversity is being shoved down your throat constantly because I'm all for diversity in books, but I want it to actually be genuine diversity rather than just ticking a list of boxes to say you've got everything covered. This one just felt very natural and flowed very easily. but I had problems with the pacing in the middle of the book, which just seemed to go really slowly. Plus everything seemed a little bit convenient, which is very, very common in YA sci-fi. But I think I would have liked a little bit more from it. So along with being a book club pick, this also fit in with the following readathons: to read a book from a subscription box for the Get Shit Done readathon, and to read a diverse book for the Read Your Shelves readathon. Then I read Captain Marvel Higher, Further, Faster by Liza Palmer. This was a review copy sent to me from Scholastic, so thank you very much to them. It is a middle grade / young YA story that takes place prior to Carol Danvers being accepted as a test pilot for the Air Force. In this story, we get the background between Carol and Maria, and it's fantastic. We see how Carol is accepted into the Air Force, how she goes through training, the struggles that she faces as she tries to prove her worth and tries to be accepted as one of the best pilots in the training program. This was honestly just delightful and fun. It was really well written. It was so super easy to read. I really, really enjoyed it. Sometimes with adaptations and those extra books you get for series that are written for children, they feel too easy. I don't know the best way. I don't know if that's the best way to describe it, but it's almost like it's just they did this and they did this, blah, blah. This actually felt like a full-on story of its own that could be told as a TV show or a movie, and I really appreciated that. It was really, really great. I read this for the Read a Book That You Need to Review for the Get Shit Done readathon, and then for the Create Your Own category, I decided to name this Kick-Ass Female Characters for the Read Your Shelves Challenge. And from here on out, it's all ebooks. So the next book I read was Mangoes and Mistletoe, which was a 2019 release on Kindle, which I gave 4.5 stars. The author is Adriana Herrera, I think. And this is a book that I read for the Romanceopoly Challenge Farmers Market, which was to read a foodie type romance. It fit the LGBTQIA+ challenge for Smutathon, and I threw it into my free space for the Read Your Shelves readathon as well. It follows two main characters. I think the first one is pronounced Kikea, but I'm not 100% sure. It looks like Kiskia, but I think it's Kikea, and Sully. And it is set around a baking show competition that is being hosted in Scotland. Both the characters have been accepted. Kikea, gosh, I'm terrible with names. She is a chef and she is trying to build a name for herself so that she can stay in the United States for longer. And each chef in the show is then paired with a home baker. Because both Kikea and Sully share the same background, and I've mentally forgotten which one it is, they're paired together, which at first really annoys Kikea because she wanted to prove her worth and really stand out on her own, not just be there because of her cultural background. The two eventually find middle ground and they also begin a relationship, and it's quite fun. It's a novella, it's very short and very easy to get through. I wish there'd been a little bit more time spent on the food, but it's sort of just thrown in there because I mean it's not very long. Then I read The Deal by Elle Kennedy, which was a 2015 release. I got it from Kindle. I gave it 5 out of 5 stars. It is a new adult contemporary romance, and it was honestly just so much fun. I read it for the Enemies to Lovers challenge for Smutathon and the Be Meaning to Read challenge for Read Your Shelves. It is book 1 in the Off-Campus series, and it follows Hannah, who is an arts student, and Garrett, who is a hockey player. It has the fake dating trope in it as well as being enemies to lovers, and it was honestly so much fun as Hannah ends up being convinced to help tutor Garrett so that he doesn't fail one of his classes and then not be able to play hockey, because hockey is his life and he's one of the star players for the college team. So he eventually wears Hannah down, and eventually they start fake dating because Hannah is interested in another athlete within the college, and Garrett basically tells her that if she's off limits, she'll become more interesting to this guy. And what starts as fake dating then develops into something that's a little bit more, and was so much fun. The banter between the characters was just great. I really, really loved it. I can't believe that I'm reading so many sports romances because I actually understand nothing about any of these sports. And you're going to hear me say that again because there's another sports romance on this list. The next book I read was Hold by Claire Kent. This is also a 2015 release from Kindle, and I gave it 3 stars. It was very average, okay. I read it for the Read Your Shelves challenge. Where'd I get this? Because I have no idea. I don't even think this fits any of the Smutathon challenges. It could, but I can't remember. I don't think I've written it down. This is a very short novella length type story. It is a science fiction romance. It is set on a prison planet, and Rihanna, the main female character, is sent there for some minor offense because in this world, any offense gets you sent to prison and basically you're stuck there for life. When she gets there, she's basically told to ally herself with the strongest man in prison for protection because basically the prisons are lawless. She ends up convincing Kane to look after her, and Kane is this very quiet, very imposing figure, but he's not the main alpha, so to speak, of the camp, but everyone is very wary of him, so they leave him alone. It's very smutty, and it goes off from there. That's about all I remember for it, because that's basically the plot. Oh, there's a prison breakout, but that's basically the main plot. Pretty sure it's book 1 of a series, but I probably won't continue with it. For the Smutathon challenge to read a book out of your comfort zone, I read Sacrifice by N. Isabel Blanco, which is a 2019 release on Kindle Unlimited, and I gave it 3 stars. This is another Hercules and Megara retelling story, so this is part of the dark fairy tale retelling series that's going around on Kindle Unlimited at the moment. As well as having some mythology retellings, this one also has a bit of a sci-fi spin on it, and it is set in the current day, and Hercules and Megara are both alive, but Heracles believes that Meg was killed many, many years ago as a result of him actually choosing to become a god. What he doesn't know is that Meg survived and is very, very bitter and very upset with him for basically turning his back on her and leaving her in Hades' care. And so she has become something else. So she was human and she has been transformed into something else in order to survive. It is a very, very dark romance, and it follows Meg and Heracles being reunited and being sent on a quest by Hades to achieve some sort of goal. This part I'm hazy on because romance novella books. But it was really interesting to see the way that this one had been done, because I had read the Hercules, Hades and Meg retelling from the Katie Roberts series as well. I think I preferred that one to this one, but this one was still very interesting just to see a different take on it. Then I read my favourite book of the week, which was The Hating Game by Sally Thorne, which is a 2016 release from P. Atkiss, and I gave this one 5 out of 5 stars as well. I can't believe that I have not read this book yet. I know it is Chelsea Dolling Reid's favourite book, or one of her favourite books, and I can see why. It was absolutely so much fun. I read it for the Smutathon challenge to read a workplace romance. This follows Lucy, who is the narrator through the whole story, so you only get one point of view, and she works opposite Josh in a book publishing company, and they both belonged to separate book publishing companies who had to merge in order to survive. They are the personal assistants for both their respective bosses, and they have this intense rivalry going on. So it is very much enemies to lovers, and it is so much fun as they just constantly try to one-up one another in the story. And what you sort of work out as you go along through the story is that perhaps this one-upmanship game is really one-sided and we only have one perspective. So it becomes really interesting to consider the actions of both characters when you start thinking about it in that way. I love Josh so much. I love him so much, and he will probably be one of my favourite male characters for the whole year. And because I decided to just keep reading books that I meant to read ages ago, I read The Kiss Quotient by Helen Huang, which was a 2018 release from Berkeley. I think I gave this 4 out of 5 stars. I read it for the Smutathon challenge to read a book recommended to you, because so many people recommend this book as being a really great contemporary romance read, and it is. It follows Stella, who is on the ASD spectrum. I think she says that she was diagnosed with Asperger's, but Asperger's has since been rolled into what is now just the ASD spectrum. And Michael, who is the escort that she hires to help her learn how to be intimate so that she can actually survive and thrive in relationships with other people, because at the moment that's just not something that she's comfortable with. Obviously, Stella and Michael continue to meet, and eventually feelings begin to develop for both of them, but they're not really sure how to communicate it, because Michael is still trying to remain professional because he's still being paid for his services, and Stella is still navigating the social intricacies of their relationship because she's still learning as well. The only reason I didn't give this 5 out of 5 stars, because this was a really good book, was I think there's a very weird power dynamic in this book, and Michael is just a little bit on the, I don't want to say possessive, because I didn't find him super possessive, but in this context I thought the power dynamic was a little bit weird between the two of them until they actually started talking and admitting that they had feelings for one another, and then I was totally on board with it. The next book I read didn't really fit into any Smutathon challenges, so this is my bonus one, and that was Sacrifice to the Dragon by Jessie Donovan. It was a 2014 release from Mythical Lake Creek and Kindle Unlimited, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I think I started reading this because I thought it fit one of the other challenges, and then it worked out that it didn't, so it's why it's a bonus one. This is a urban fantasy world where there are dragon shifters. In this world, dragons are hunted. Their blood is quite powerful and can cure most human diseases, and as a result they get hunted for it, as well as, you know, just general people not understanding their culture. One way of ensuring that humans can legally access their blood, and also to help propagate the dragon shifter communities, which are sort of dwindling, is they have a pact where people can actually sign up to produce heirs. So they spend anywhere between 6 to 18 months in one of the dragon communities, and they're paired up with one of the dragons, they have a kid, and afterwards they can either decide to stay or they can decide to go. And our main character, Melanie, decides to do this because her younger brother is dying from an infection, and she believes that the only way to save him is for him to have access to dragon's blood. And so she signs up and goes off to meet Tristan, who is a bit of an ass to begin with, let's be real. But eventually he recognizes her as his mate, and he has some huge prejudices against humans. And so this is not a great thing to begin with, and it's about how they sort of reconcile their relationship, blah, blah, blah. This one was fine, nothing to write home about. I also read A Hunger Like No Other by Cresley Cole, which is the first book in the Immortals After Dark series. This book was published in 2011 by Simon & Schuster, and I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. I read it for the Smutathon challenge to read a forbidden romance, and I also read it because I've been listening to the Fated Mates podcast, and I've been listening to old episodes where they actually went through and discussed every book in this series. So it was interesting to go into it, and I'd actually listened to the episode about the first book before I'd read it, which was probably really useful for me because there were some issues that I had with this book. I enjoyed it, but there were things that sort of didn't sit right with me. So this follows Emma, who is a half vampire, half Valkyrie, and Lachlan, who is a shifter. And all of these races are at odds with one another. Emma is very rare in that she is a mixture of 2 races, but all 3 races do not get along with one another. And at the beginning of the book, we meet Lachlan, who is chained in the catacombs, and he is constantly burning with this sort of eternal flame as punishment. He was captured by the vampires, and so this is his punishment, and that's been going on for decades. So he just sort of burns and heals and burns again. So quite traumatic. He ends up escaping when he senses that his mate is nearby. So this is a Fated Mates romance, and that is Emma. He escapes and he follows her all the way across Paris. And when he finds her, he discovers that she is a vampire, and this does not go over well for him. He ends up holding her captive, essentially, and convinces her to drive him home to Scotland, and there he will give her a reward and implies that he will let her go. He, however, knows that she is his mate and that he's not letting her go, which is problem number 1. The journey that they take, so it's a bit of a road trip thing as well, because they can't travel constantly, because by day Emma has to be in a dark place because she falls asleep and she doesn't move and she burns in the sun. Emma herself is a really interesting character because she doesn't know very much about herself, her vampire side. She's never been in contact with the vampires. She's been raised by the Valkyries, and so she's this very innocent sort of character for a while, and at times quite annoying because she just does stupid things. But then eventually bigger things come into play and Emma has to learn how to save herself, and so that's totally fine, and I'm totally on board with that. So yes, this was just a really interesting sort of urban fantasy paranormal romance read. Again, not what I was expecting. I'll probably continue this series because there are some other characters that are introduced that I know get books later on in the series, which I think would be really fascinating to read. And I've also heard that the books do get better after this one. The last book that I read this week was Full Contact by Cassie Cole, which was a 2019 release from Juicy Gems Publishing and was on Kindle Unlimited, and I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars, I think. I read it for the 2019 release for the Smutathon. It is a new adult reverse harem story, and it follows Roberta, who is a kinesiology student, I believe, where she's looking to go into sports medicine, and in order to pass her course, she needs to get credits by doing work placement, essentially. And she's been rejected from the sports program or the athletics program at the school, and it's very hard to find other positions in the local area. And one night at a party, she comes across Danny, who is a very attractive guy who seems very down to earth, and they hit it off straight away, and then they have a one-night stand. And she finds out later on that he's the star quarterback for the football team. Danny and his 2 roommates, Lance and Fenya, decide to offer Roberta the opportunity to work as, not their coach, they're like a training expert, because the person who has been hired by the coaching department is frankly rubbish and doesn't know anything. He's sort of got the position because his family had money. Being a reverse harem book, obviously, eventually things happen. It gets very smutty very quickly, all sorts of different random combinations. But I think what was interesting about this book was the detail that Cassie Cole has put into actually detailing the football and the actual playing of the sport within the story, because it's very crucial, because one, 3 of the characters play the game and the other character is helping them recover from the game and improve on their own skills. So that was really fascinating because, as I said, I know nothing about sport. My country has at least 4 codes of football, which most people are obsessed with. I have no idea. So trying to throw American football in there as well, and I will call it American football because I need to distinguish it from all of the types of football that I actually vaguely know the name of here in Australia. Even the description, I still couldn't understand it and wrap my head around what was going on. But the descriptions themselves were actually really quite good. I'm not familiar with the actual game and the way that it's played. So talking about the different groups of footballers that come on and off, and I don't get it. I don't get it. To each their own. The story itself was fine and it didn't detract from my enjoyment of the story in any way. There's also a bit of a subplot where there's a bit of a mystery and a sabotage thing going on. Those were my Smutathon books. This looks like a very small stack of books considering the fact that I read 12 of them, but you know, most of them were on my Kindle. In the comments below, let me know if you have read any of these books or if you're planning on reading them in the future. Alternatively, feel free to let me know what you have been reading recently. Anything stand out to you as being something that you think I might like to read, because I love recommendations. Trust me, I add so many things to my TBR on a daily basis. I hope that wherever you are in the world, you're having a wonderful day, and I'll catch you guys in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye guys.